We are ready for our next speaker. Please allow me to introduce you to Mary Galloway, the CEO of Women's Society of Cyberjutsu. That's going to be good. Mary is a CEO and a founding board member of the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, WSC, one of the fastest growing 501c3 nonprofit cybersecurity communities dedicated to bringing more women and girls to cyber. WSC provides its members with the resources and support required to enter and advance as cybersecurity professionals. Marie began her cyber career, with Accenture, where she excelled as a network engineer. Mary is also the inaugural ISC2 Diversity Award winner for 2019, with over 12 years of information technology, 10 of which are in cybersecurity. Her expertise spans network design and security architecture, risk assessment, vulnerability management, incident response, and policy development across governmental and commercial industries. So please, welcome Mary Galloway with Locknote.
All right, can you guys hear me? Yeah, I can hear myself. So I know it's the end of the day, it's on a Friday, and we're all exhausted and tired. So I'm going to try to get through this quickly so that we can all go and enjoy ourselves after this event. So if you had fun today, please clap your hands. Yes, there we go. Good, good, good. And I also have a book to give away that Miss Carlotta was an author in, plus a number of other Cyberjutsu members were authors in. So stick around, you might be able to win this. If you decide to fall asleep, please don't snore, because I will call you out. We don't like snoring in here. So today, I'm going to talk about automating the BS, the boring stuff, the bullshit, whatever you want to call it, and what you need to know about doing that. So this is kind of what we're going to go through. Who am I? She kind of already told you who I am, but I'll tell you a little bit more. We'll talk about the difference between orchestration and automation, sort of a history of it, some stats and myths, because a lot of folks don't understand automation and the importance of it. And then we'll talk about how to get started. So basically on Monday when you go back to work, you can start thinking about some of these things and start looking at how you can automate in your organization. So that's me, 12 years, Cyber Ninja. If you're on LinkedIn, find me. It's open, it's free. My tagline has Cyber Ninja in it. I'm the founder, one of the founders and the CEO of Cyberjutsu. Like she said, we help train women and girls to get into this space. Marcel Lee, if you took our workshop yesterday, she's one of our board members. Carlota is also a member. And hopefully all of you will become members of the organization at some point. I also work for a major cybersecurity vendor in this space, doing automation and helping customers understand where we can implement automation in their organization and basically doing the technical side of things. I won't say who, but if you want to know, I can tell you later. I'm also a professor, a board member, and a volunteer on everything. So as my role as CEO, I am a volunteer. I don't get paid to do that, but I like to help people and give back. And then I'm a winemaker in Las Vegas. So if you're ever in Las Vegas and want to learn how to make wine, let me know. I'll take you to Grape Expectations, where we make our wine at every year. A Lego builder. So here on this photo, that is the front half of the Titanic Lego set that I'm working on right now. It's about 9,000 pieces. And that's important because as security professionals, we like to solve challenges and solve problems. And I like to build Lego stuff. If you're familiar with Star Wars, I also have the Millennium Falcon built at the house. That took about a week to do. This took about 6 hours to do. There's 3 parts, so there's 2 more parts for that. And I'm a crafter, so yarn craft, needlework, all that kind of stuff. Kind of the boring things. So, automation versus orchestration. Do you guys all know what automation and orchestration means? And if you don't, let me know. So, thank you. Automation is basically taking tasks and removing the human from doing that work. So think about phishing emails. We get phishing emails all day, every day. And it takes analysts sometimes 4 days to analyze, pull out indicators, start to pull some of that information to see what's really going on. And then we have to go and figure out, was anybody else affected by this particular phishing email? That takes a lot of time. Automation helps you reduce that amount of time so that you can have your analysts doing other stuff. It improves reliability and efficiency, because we all know, as humans, as we're doing these repetitive tasks all the time, we might forget something, we might miss something, we'll make errors, and so things can happen, right? Automation also reduces the repetitive tasks. Orchestration, on the other hand, is taking those automated tasks that you've done and starting to put the pieces together to build this big picture. Basically an orchestra. So each instrument inside of an orchestra is a task, but when it comes together, you have this huge big picture. It makes sense, it does things, it optimizes your workflows that you currently have if you have them in place. If you don't have workflows in place, I suggest you put them in place. And it also improves scalability. So if you want to grow your organization, if you want to grow your revenue, implementing automation and orchestration can help you do that. So a little bit of history. So that first orange bubble, automation, we start to see that with the Mayans and the Greeks with aqueducts, bringing water from the oceans into their cities so that they can live their lives and do their stuff, right? We start to move into the Industrial Revolution with steam engines, and that helps to move cranes and trains and things across the countries and across the United States and even here, okay? Then in the 1900s, 1946 to be exact, you start to hear automation in the automobile industry. So with Ford, if you guys are familiar with Ford, they started to build out assembly lines to help make cars faster, get them out into the environment faster. There's still some human interaction because you want to make sure you're checking what's going on, but now we have these robots that are doing work 24/7/365. That next bubble here at the bottom, that's where computers and stuff come in. So you start to see microprocessors coming in, the advancement of personal computers, and we're starting to get more into the handheld stuff when it comes to automation. Finally, where we're at now, as they call it the fourth industrial revolution, this is where AI and machine learning come into play. So if you have Nests in your house and you have like Vivint and Google Voice and those different types of tools that help you with home automation, that's where we're at right now. And that's kind of the future of where we're going, where machine learning is learning about what's happening in your environment and helping you make decisions on what you should and shouldn't do when it comes to triaging alerts and making decisions to help keep your organization protected. Interesting stats. So y'all don't have to read all of this, but one of the things, who has incident response in-house? And like incident response teams? 3 people, 4. So everybody else has no incident response teams in their organization? Oh, you guys are already underwater, so if you've heard anybody talk about incident response today, you need to call them and get them in your environment ASAP. Which is weird because 90% of organizations that were surveyed by Palo Alto, Forbes, and WorkMarket say that they have incident response in-house, but most people don't. So if something happens, you don't have a team to help you identify the root cause, to help you figure out, okay, what systems were affected, who was affected, how did they get in? That's a problem, okay? So 1 in 6 organizations with 10,000 plus employees have 1 to 3 IR team members. So the folks that have an IR team, how many people are on your team? I think you raised your hand. How many people on your team?
I think we have around a dozen.
Okay. What about you?
Probably about 6.
What about you?
3.
So there you go. That's the person that has 1 to 3. If something happens, what do you do? If you have an incident every single day, what are you supposed to do? So this is how automation can help identify those issues and fix those and resolve those issues. Who does threat intel management, or who does threat management? Anybody? Does your organization have a threat management platform or program? Nothing. Okay. 1 person. So if you're trying to do threat management and threat intel, you're doing it manually, which means you're looking through logs, you're looking through alerts, trying to find the bad stuff. With automation, that can help you. You can implement machine learning and AI to kind of look for that stuff for you, and then you as the human can look at the results later. The other big thing that I think is really important here is that 74% of incidents that analysts are triaging a day are going to be phishing. Like I said, we get phishing stuff. I think I just looked at one this morning, and I was just like, really? This is not even a good phishing email. But somebody's going to click it, but we see that all the time. The next is malware with 56%, and then endpoint. So your phones, your computers, your end-user devices, alerts on those are always happening, especially if you don't have tools in place, processes in place to keep your employees from doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't be on Twitter at work, but you know they probably are. Who knows? So this is really important because with automation, you're able to reduce the number of alerts that your analysts are triaging. And you're able to free up some time for them to do other more complex things, like the threat intel and the threat hunting and managing that part of the system. And I thought this was really cool that companies with heavy automation are 6 times more likely to have an increase in revenue, right? 15% increase, actually, because they're automating those things that are super boring, that are super redundant, that are super repetitive, and they're able to have their analysts do other stuff. So if you don't have automation, if you don't have threat intel, if you don't have threat management, looking at automation is probably really going to be important for you. And it doesn't matter what size your organization is. It can be small, it can be large, it can be medium size, it doesn't matter. So let's talk about myths. So I want you guys to participate. What have you heard about automation besides reading what's on the screen? Doesn't matter, just shout it out. And if you shout it out, you might be entered to win this book. Anybody? Okay. Okay. Any other? That's a good one. Any other stuff that you've heard, that you think? Okay. 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 Good. So those are all really good things to think about. Yes, it can be expensive, right? But it's only at the very beginning. If you're putting in tools, but over time, your company could save $4 million with automation, depending on the size of your organization. Because you're automating those redundant tasks that your analysts are doing daily. And once you start to automate those things, it takes them into somewhere else. And your systems are able to find things that you probably wouldn't have found as the human, as the person looking for this stuff. Most folks think that once you implement some kind of SOAR automation platform, you just set it and forget it. That's not the case. You can't do that. You have to actively be in there tuning and making sure things are going right, continuously monitoring it to make sure that it's pulling the information that it's supposed to do. A lot of folks think that jobs are at risk. Not really, right? Your focus just changes. You're no longer doing those mundane, routine tasks that are super boring, causing turnover, right? You're letting your analysts be analysts and actually analyze the data that's coming in. Automation solves all your problems. Definitely not true. So there's a lot of stuff that automation won't solve. Exactly. It can solve a lot of your problems, but it's not going to solve all of them. You're still going to need some human interactions when you're dealing with automation and thinking about how to best fit this into your organization. I've had customers at the company that I work for, they're like, oh, it's difficult to put this into our environment because we've got all of these different separate locations and network segmentation. And it's like, well, actually, automation might actually help you. Because now you're able to communicate with all of those different areas in your organization and see what's going on and put remediations in place to protect those spaces. And typically complex infrastructures like the ICS or the industrial control systems that are super legacy, super old, and they're like, oh, we can't. But you have to change your expectations and change what you're looking for in there and figure out how can we put this into our environment and pull some value out of it. Too expensive. I mentioned this already, but yes. Tools are expensive, but a lot of you probably already have tools in-house that you can start automation with, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit at the very end. In the beginning, it's expensive, but at the end of the day, it saves you a lot of money. And then it causes friction. So if you have to communicate with the network department or with another business unit, there's always that friction because nobody likes security. Nobody wants to have automation. Nobody wants to lose control of their domain or what they're doing. And I think that automation actually promotes collaboration, because now you have to talk to these other units to figure out, okay, what processes are you doing? How can you interact with us? How can we work together to make this better and make our organization secure? So, a quick example, and Carlota posted she has an ROI calculator that you guys can use. Palo Alto has a calculator you can use as well, but this is an example of a made-up organization. It's not a real organization, but typically you'll have about 16 incidents a year or a month, and the response time per incident is about 415 minutes or 6 to 7 hours of response time. Right, so if you have 16 of those every single month, you're spending $4,800, give or take, depending on how much it costs for your analyst. That can be reduced with automation. This average salary is just a bunch of numbers from like Indeed and different job sites to say what the average salary is for an analyst doing this type of work, and that's the cost per incident based on how long it takes them to do it. So if you start to look at automation, you're able to start saving, on average, 110 hours per month per incident per analyst, okay? Over time, over the cost of a year, or the course of a year, you're almost at $60,000. So if your analysts make more than $43 and you start to add in automation to give them time to do what they need to do, you're saving way more than $58,000. And in some places, that's somebody's salary, right? Now you're able to use that money to help with training your employees, with getting them to conferences like BSides came in, to helping them do other things inside of your organization. So that's really important. This number will change for managers, for leadership, for other folks in your organization, but the fact that you can save almost 60 grand with automation is super important. So, how do we get started? I always like to do the who, what, where, when, why, and how. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nickelodeon, but there used to be a show called I think it was like the 5 W's or something. It was like a news show for kids. And they went through all of these different pieces of each topic they were talking about. So when I think of automation, when I talk to my customers, I want them to go through this process. So step 1, or step 0, is it time to automate? So how do you know when it's time to automate? Recent breach. So if you've been breached recently, it's probably time you start some sort of automation, whether that's automated threat hunting, whether that's automated triaging of alerts, whether that's automating pushing indicators to firewalls or other tools in your environment. Your SOC response times are slipping. If you're managing your SOC response times, if you're looking at that, if you're tracking that, and you notice that, yesterday it took an analyst 4 days to complete a task, and now it's taking them 6 days, it might be time to look at automating some of that stuff. Threats are missed. This is a big one. I don't know if you've ever looked at traffic on endpoints on an environment, but a lot of the stuff that's really important gets missed because it's informational or low severity. We tend to focus on the high severity and the critical things, but there's a lot of information in those low incidents. And I have this Target breach on here because Target was breached a few years ago, and the incident was right in their face. It was right in the traffic, but they weren't seeing it because they weren't looking for it. They were looking at the high stuff. With automation can help you see those things. False positive overload. If you're getting 1 million alerts a day, you don't know what's false positive, what's a real positive, okay? And so with adding automation in, you can figure those things out quickly and start to filter that stuff out before you even have to worry about looking at it. And if your SOC has no organization, it might be time to look at automation. I also added the SANS logo on here because I used to work for this casino, and they had gotten breached in 2014 through their industrial control systems from their Pennsylvania location that they just sold. They managed to get through their Pennsylvania location to the location in Vegas and bring the systems down and cause the casino to lose millions of dollars every single day until they could get it back up. Automation probably could have helped identify that issue happening, and they could have helped stop it. So step one, who? Who should be involved in this? Definitely your analyst. I've seen too many organizations that have left the analyst out, left the engineer out, and these are the folks that do the work on the ground. They need to be involved in this conversation because they're the ones that are doing this. They're the ones that know what needs to happen and what's going on. Your program manager, that's the person that's going to oversee this program, because at first it's going to be a program, a project, but then eventually it's going to move into just a regular part of your security operations. Your executive sponsor, the executive sponsor is going to be the person that's going to go to bat for you. They're going to be that influencer. They're going to be the voice of reason to help you get this project over the finish line. And then business unit leaders. So when we think of automation, a lot of folks think of it as simply a security tool. But you can use automation in every part of your organization. I like when customers use it for onboarding and offboarding employees. Right? There's a lot of different things that have to happen when you onboard somebody, so let's automate that process. We get them an email address, then we start to provision them and all the tools that they need, and we don't have to worry about anything. It also helps when you're offboarding them because now you know where they're supposed to be, where they were, and you can take all of their accesses away from them. And you can do that automatically without having to interact with it as a human. Step two, the what. So what can be automated? If you have runbooks or playbooks already built out or workflows already built out, you can start to look at, okay, maybe we can automate this, maybe this task is a little bit simpler, and we can start to figure out what that looks like. Again, look outside of security for use cases. Onboarding and offboarding of employees. There's a bunch of different things that you can do with that particular thing. What are your critical assets? Do you know what those are? And do we need to be aware of that, and what do we need to protect in that space? So some questions to consider. What processes do you currently have? If you have a process for phishing, if you have a process for malware analysis, let's look at that and see, are those things time sucks? Do they take a lot of time for our people to do? What can we do quickly? So this is the other part of it where folks want to automate some hard stuff very quickly, and it's like, yeah, you're not going to get an ROI from that because you're not going to do it successfully. So let's look at the stuff that we can do easily. A lot of the automation tools that are out there will have built-in playbooks for phishing, for malware analysis, for incident response in general, and you can start to look at that as an option for what to do first. Again, which processes are taking up a lot of time? This is where the analyst comes in and can tell you, well, this process over here is taking more time than this process over here. So let's start to look at this over here and automate it. And then, are you bound by any regulatory requirements? So if you're in the States, we have HIPAA for medical, we've got PCI DSS for the credit cards. Do those things govern what it is we're trying to do, and do we need to put some automation in place to meet those requirements? The next is where. So where does your stuff lie? Where's your data? Where's your applications? Where are your tools? Where are your people? Are they remote? Are they on site? Do you have identified who the important players are, what the crown jewels are? This is really important when it comes to orchestration because you can automate a bunch of stuff, but now if I pull out indicators from a phishing email, I want to send that to my EDL and put it in a firewall so we can start blocking it. I want to go and search my entire environment and see if anybody else has interacted with that particular indicator of compromise. I want to go and destroy those emails in those inboxes. That's where the orchestration comes from, and understanding where your stuff lies, where your data is lying, helps you build that program. So some of the tools that are recommended here, network diagrams. If you don't have them, get them. Very important. Doesn't matter if it's in the cloud or if it's on-prem, you need to have it. Asset inventories. Do you have an asset inventory system? If you don't, you need to get one. If you have other asset tools, look at that data in there. And then brainpower. With some of these organizations, people have been there for years and years and years. They have a lot of knowledge in their head. Pull that information out of them, document it, get it on paper, and that'll start to help you figure out, okay, where do we need to put these tools to do what we need to do? When? When do we manually do stuff and when do we automate stuff? So yes, we can fully automate processes, but sometimes, when you have an indicator that you want to push to a firewall and block, you may not actually want to block it right away. You may want somebody to come and look at it and make sure it should be blocked and then do that blocking manually. So identifying where that process takes place is really important. And then how often should these processes run? With a lot of tools, you can start to fetch indicators and you can fetch alerts regularly, every hour, every day, every month. What does that look like for you and what do you guys need? How often are you interacting with those systems that have the alerts and what does that look like for you? And then what's your budget, right? If you're an analyst, you may not know what the budget is, but that's fine. But talk to your management team and say, hey, what's our budget for putting something like this in and when can we start to do this process? And then the why. So check step 0. So remember, there's those things that said there was a breach, there was something else that happened. That's the first part of it. But then, why are you wanting to automate processes in your organization? Have you been mandated to do it? Does your boss want to move into the future because he knows that, we're going to get hit with all of these different alerts and all these different attacks coming in the future? Do the benefits outweigh the cost? In most cases, they do, depending on how you go about starting the automation process. What's the ROI? Your management team can help you figure that out, and that's a part of that why. And what's the end goal? Do you want to be able to give your analysts more abilities and more time to learn and to dig into some of those threat intel types of things or not? And then maybe your overall security plan is important. You know what that is. Okay, cool. Automation helps us get to what our end goal is for our security organization. Step 6, start small. This is the how. So how do you do this? Start small. Most customers that I've seen, they want to start with the most complex thing in their environment and then get frustrated when 4 months later they have not automated anything, they see no return on value. So start small. Start with things like phishing, like threat intel management, bringing indicators in and doing attribution on them and pulling that information into your environment. Build a plan. You got to have a plan to do this kind of thing. What does this look like? What's the timelines look like? Are we going to bring in other tools that may be useful for us to be successful? If you don't know what assets you have, identify them. And assets are people, processes, and technology, because they're all important when it comes to developing automation and doing automation. If you don't have runbooks or playbooks or workflows built, you need to get them done now. So if you're an analyst or an engineer doing stuff, write it down. I can't tell you how valuable that part is when a customer comes to me and says, hey, we have all of these runbooks already. It's like, cool, this is gonna be easy because you already have the process ready. And then you have to monitor it. Like I said, you can't set it and forget it. You have to monitor what's going on because sometimes things will change. Sometimes your requirements will change. Sometimes what you're looking for will change. So you have to continually monitor what it is that you're trying to do. And then have fun. Nothing in security is really, it's fun, but it's not fun when you're getting started. But you have to have fun with it, right? Because at the end of the day, what you're going to do is save your company money, give your analysts back time to do other fun stuff and more complex stuff, and you're going to be happier in the long run as well. So this is just a quick, if you're thinking about automation and where to start, if you already have some of these tools in your environment, you don't have to necessarily buy a platform. You can use PowerShell if you have people that can program and that like to program. You can use your firewall data and start to analyze that information. You can use all of your tools that you currently have, but I highly recommend looking at platforms that help you figure out how to do this automation and kind of build that machine learning in to learn what's going on as you continue to get those emails and those alerts into your environment. That's one of the cool things too about automation is that as we move through the future, we see things with AI and machine learning, and it's learning what's bad, what's good in your environment based on what's coming in. And I think that's my last one. That was quick. Any questions? I have a heckler moving. Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
What would be your recommendation for a block automation for a small business?
Let's let Carlota take that one because I work with big companies. I don't know for small companies.
Okay, that's fun. Small companies, you're going to look more at what you've got in-house, right? You're looking at your email productivity suite. You're automating what you can on the email side. You're looking at scheduling more than anything, right? You're not getting a lot of automation, you're getting a lot of reminders. So if you're using Jira or something, you can kick off a lot of things through that. There are things like Better Cloud, All Cloud that will push tasks between different cloud services. So if you're not invested heavily in on-premise stuff, All Cloud, Better Cloud, those can have some very affordable options for especially automating HR tasks, onboarding, offboarding, turning off access to different services. Really recommend looking at those sorts of things. I think it's really going to depend on what's important to your business, where you feel like, I feel like for a small business, automating asset capture, both on laptops, you can do that through an MDM, for example, but also automating digital assets. If you're in GCP, AWS, as a lot of my clients are, just figuring out, turning on some of those native AWS tools that will give you an idea of what's in there for assets, asset inventory. That becomes really, you're really focused on how can I improve basic hygiene, right?
Right.
That's been my experience, at least.
Good question. Any other questions? So on Monday, you all should be able to go to work and talk to your bosses about, hey, how do we start looking at automation? And what do we need to do to make this happen? And then you call me or Carlota and say, okay, we're ready to start. Any other questions? Yes.
When should people start thinking about orchestration? Does it happen while they're thinking about automation or after they've automated what they want to automate?
It depends on where they're at in the process. Obviously, you want to start with automation first, sort of to figure out what those processes look like, what can we start to do. We'll have a lot of customers that will they'll do some parts of the automation piece of it, but they won't necessarily go towards blocking things just yet, only because they want to make sure that nothing is broken when they do that. So you can definitely start to think about it, but that's where that network segmentation comes into play, and like understanding where your assets lie and how we can interact with those from the platform. Let's start with the individual tasks first, get the ROI on that, and then start to do the other pieces of it. I think he has a question right here in the front. No? Okay. Any other questions? Well, if you need a consultant, let me know. Are you here locally? I'll come back. And you guys can ask any question about anything, to be honest, if you have anything. Nothing? Okay, cool. Do we have any students in the audience? Okay. What about first-time security conference goers? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Shoot. All right, did you bring more? Okay.
Desperately wants a book.
Right.
Somebody take the book. Everyone else give me your name. I'll send you a book.
Okay, that works. Last question. What's the answer to the world? 42. Oh, geez, you guys know stuff. Okay. So this book, Reinventing Cybersecurity, Carlota was a contributing author in here, like she mentioned. It's a really good book. I wrote a quote in it as well. They also will be at CyberJitsuCon in June in the Maryland, D.C. area doing a book signing. So if you're in that area at that time, come hang out with us. It's actually really good, like one of the better cybersecurity books that I've read. So, Who do you want to give it to?
But the lady in white, did you raise your hand?
The lady in the white with the mask on. Oh, happy birthday! So, lady in the white, you get an autographed copy of Reinventing Cybersecurity. So here you go. If you guys have any, yes. Oh, crap! I don't think she has any more books. Well, we've got some whiskey for you. She's gonna sign it for you right over there. Again, if you have any, I know this was quick and fast, but if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to ask. I'm not trying to sell you anything. For one, this is not my region. My region is in the Pac Northwest of the United States. But I can definitely talk to you guys about different tools and things that you can utilize to help with, threat hunting, automation, all that stuff. And that's it. Yay.